Alrighty, all welcome back to the channel. We're back on the internet together again today. We're talking Australia's $1 trillion debt. Good old Peter Costello's getting stuck right in. He was the last man to have a surplus 20 odd years ago to this day. Then we're going to be talking about Australian diversity and how it's changing the makeup of the country. So stick around for a bit of a longer show today. And before we get started, consider subbing, liking, sharing, all that sort of stuff that does help the channel out.
To deliver his fifth federal budget in a climate of rising inflation, low productivity and debt about to soar to $1 trillion. For the first time in Australia's history, there's an extraordinary milestone today that we cannot let pass without special attention. Because just 2 decades ago, our budget position was something that was envied the world over. Now, few countries in history can say that they are or were debt-free. But that's where we stood on the 21st of April 2006, a nation with no net Commonwealth debt, running surplus budgets, inflation under control, productivity strong, and a new future fund to boot.
That was a good time. I mean, back in 2006, I remember that quite fondly. It only feels like yesterday, but yeah, it's strange how 20 years can fly by. 2006 and now, you probably couldn't imagine back then just how different this country is in terms of prosperity, optimism, and just a general good outlook overall on the world, not just the nation. You wouldn't have thought since then that we'd be having such huge immigration to the point where we don't have enough houses, and they're continuing to do it, even though we don't have enough houses, importing taxpayers. You wouldn't have thought that we would have been all locked down in our houses. Now I'm talking from a Victorian perspective, locked down in your house for months on end, over a 2-year period, months and months and months. You can't go for 5 kilometres from your house. You can't go out after 8 o'clock at night. All this stuff. All this crazy stuff that if you would have said to someone, this is what's going to happen, they're going to look at you, they're going to commit you to a mental asylum. We've got wars. We've got stuff going on now. We've got the US-Iran that is just causing a lot of pain for a lot of people in terms of cost of living and availability of petrol, etc. If you look back, you wouldn't have even thought that this would be possible. Even back then, I'll get on to a few topics today, but I'm talking about back then, as a younger guy, I would have been in 2006, would have been early 20s. I knew that if I could work hard, save, sacrifice, do work weekends, work public holidays, whatever jobs you can do and extra ways to make money, that could pay off for me to have a deposit for a house someday. Now, it took me a long time, but I knew that I could do that. It was a goal. It was attainable. You've got the young Australians today looking down the barrel of either needing to buy a tiny apartment somewhere, which is, I won't even go down the apartment route. You guys know my thoughts on that if you watch my channels. Go down the apartment route, a dog box in the sky for inflated amounts of money, or alternatively, you're going to have to live 2 hours away from the CBD, and even then, it's still very expensive. Good times. Now we're $1 trillion in debt to boot. That's the point that I'm getting to here. $1 trillion. And if you apply the normal interest rate on that, what's that? $4 to $5 billion a year. No, $45 billion a year. Trillion's 1,000 billion. So you got $50 billion a year in interest payments. Work that out. How much is that a day? About $100 million? I don't know. But bloody hell, it's cooked. How is this going to get paid? I know how it's going to try and get paid. Me and you. Good old Mr. Taxpayer.
Just 20 years, it's criminal how far and fast things have deteriorated. Peter Costello remains the nation's longest-serving treasurer, presiding over 13 budgets and instilling a budget discipline within the Howard government that even today is legendary. Now, I sat down with him to reflect on this historic achievement, his legacy as Treasurer, and his reflections on the current state of the books and the serious economic challenges we face as a nation.
The Honourable the Treasurer.
Mr. Speaker, we have now eliminated the $96 billion of net debt that Labor left the Australian government when it left office. Our budget is in surplus for the 9th time in 10 years, a forecast surplus in 2006-7 of $10.8 billion. Now the Australian government is debt-free in net terms. We do not have to collect taxes to pay the government interest bill. We are saving over $8 billion in annual interest payments.
$8 billion in annual interest payments. Now it's, as I said, it's in the measure of probably around $50 billion, $40 to $50 billion. Joints cooked. Let's talk about debt. Debt's something that we're going to have to become very accustomed to as Australians. Or we already are very accustomed to it. There's the sensitivity testing has worked, right? We're desensitized. Taking out $1 million in debt to get your sort of standard house. $1 million, that's on the more moderate side. If you want something that's a little bit nicer, maybe something a little bit closer to town, you're up for $1.5-2 million. Absolutely astronomical. And we're signing up to these deals, so Australia's probably in lifetime debt, multi-generational debt. And I dare say many people watching who have been able to get into the property market recently, you're going to be paying that house off for the full term. You're going to be paying that house off for 30 years or even longer if you keep recutting, refinancing, all that sort of stuff. It's really crazy to think about. Because even back to 2006, if you grinded, you probably could pay it off in half of that. You had two income household, smashing it. Absolutely smashing it. Now it's bare minimum requisite for both people in a couple, if you're that way, if you're living with somebody, to work in a household, to make ends meet, and to have a little bit of comfort, and to be able to save money. I don't know how a single person who's living anywhere metropolitan near any of the cities here in Australia, Brisbane, Sydney, Melbourne, how you actually doing it, and if you're able to put $1 away, because the chips are definitely stacked against single people, I'll tell you that.
Peter Costello, welcome.
Thank you very much.
The 21st of April marks a remarkable anniversary. It's 20 years since Australia did what so few countries in the world have been able to do, and that's to pay off the debt, to be in a position of no net Commonwealth debt. Take us back to the 96 election when you walk into the Treasurer's office on the first day, you inherit that budget black hole from Labor. What went through your mind? How did you tackle it?
Well, of course, it was a big shock to everybody because we'd been led to believe the state of the books were much better than they were. And so the bad news, the good news was election night. The bad news was the Monday morning. The situation isn't what you'd been told. You've got a big budget deficit, and you've got a...
GMAN, that was Liberals. The Liberals did that. It was neo-capitalism. Albanese's inherited that. Has Albanese inherited going and spending billions of dollars on infrastructure programs that aren't needed? No. Net zero, committing over $100 billion over the next 10 years to develop infrastructure for renewables that's just going to push the price of electricity up. It's got more and more taxes on everybody, even ones that are invisible that no one knows they're paying, just about on every product that we buy. And we're still $1 trillion in debt and growing every single day.
Real problem of trying to now bring in your election program. You promised an election program based on the fact that the budget's in surplus, and you still got your election program, but the budget's in deficit. What do we do? What do we do about this? And we came to the view that over 2 years we should drive the budget back into surplus. And that took an enormous effort of going through the budget line by line for months. And the second thing we thought is, we've got to stop this ever happening again.
People often say to me, why could you do then what we don't seem to be able to do now? And I remember, as a ministerial staffer at the time, your ERC committee, your budget review process, you'd have to go through your budget in your own office line by line. You'd have to fight for every bit of spending you had. You had to know your programs. You know, you wanted ministers to demonstrate that this was the best spend for that dollar. Is the program achieving what you're told it's achieving? But you also treated every dollar.
It's my understanding we've currently got a finance minister. He doesn't even have a finance background. Or something along those lines. Don't understand any technicalities about financing or forecasting or numbers, modelling, nothing. Make it make sense.
All that you spent like it came out of your own pocket.
Oh, absolutely.
What's changed?
Look, there was a rigour about it. It's not your money. It's taxpayers' money. There are needy people, and let's make sure that the money goes to the needy people, but gee, let's not waste a dollar here. Just like you would be with your own finances. And I sat through budget, I did 12 budgets, more budgets than anybody else in Australian history.
Just loves it. Just loves a spreadsheet, loves going through a bit of austerity. I'm a big fan of that. Controlling costs. Scrutinising costs. That's the way to go, mate. Loves it. Look at the smile on his face. All about it. We don't have that now. Just spend shit. Don't even worry about it.
I don't think it's...
Just get more tax. You'll be right. Just, hit property investors. And I've been ranting about that the last few days, but that's all that is. Just property investors. Just go for them. Don't even pay shitloads of tax anyway, but let's just get them for more.
It's a record to be so proud about, but and every year it was just an exacting business. Fighting quite often with spending ministers. Every minister that comes into a budget committee will have their own little plan about if you only give them more money here and a little bit more money over there, they can solve the problems of the country.
Why they're different.
And what's more, win an election. And, I've heard every pitch in the book, every single one. And the funny thing was, sometimes a minister would go and their replacement would come in and mount exactly the same argument the next year. And you knew, in fact, it wasn't the ministerial argument, it was the public service argument that was coming back through different ministers over the years. The good thing about being there for 12 years is I actually knew more about these individual budgets than the ministers did, right? And I remember saying to a very senior person once, I think we heard this submission 6 years ago, actually. I'll tell you why we rejected it then, because I think we should reject it again this time.
So, okay, you pay back $96 billion of debt, and we're 20 years on from that miraculous day of no net debt. What do you think when you look at the fact we're almost on the precipice of having $1 trillion of debt?
Well, say it, Peter. Joint's fucked. Say that.
It's heartbreaking. To have worked so hard and to have got Australia into such a good condition. We were strong. We were admired around the world. I mean, the Americans couldn't do this. The British couldn't do this.
Get Johnny back in. One last tour. The retirement tour. Get him in. But no, people are going to keep voting Labor, even though the Joint has gone absolutely downhill in the 2 years that he's been in, or 1 year that even Albo's been in. So 1 or 2 years. I can't keep up with it. Oh, cheaper housing. We're going to make Australians and be able to afford their houses. We're going to make electricity bills down. Instantly, everything's gone the other way. Causing inflation by running these massive programs, infrastructure programs no one wants. Especially this net zero, this renewable energy stuff. It's virtue signalling at its finest. Get a nuclear power plant. Done and dusted, cheap available energy.
The French couldn't do this. The Germans couldn't do this. The Japanese couldn't do this. But Australia stood out. and we were admired around the world. We got our budget under control. We eliminated Commonwealth debt, net debt. We're a shining example of a success story right now.
So did you think it would go back so far, so fast?
I hope this would be a gift to future generations of Australians. That was my hope.
We've got a gift now. I've got a gift. A lifetime of debt and increasing taxes. Because at the end of the day, guys, that's our debt. It's not our Elbow and Chalmers and whoever else is racking up the bills is paying for it. We're paying for it. And we'll continue to pay for it forever.
You know, we've done this incredible work. We've cleared our debt. We've actually set up a savings fund called the Future Fund. Right? This is a gift to generations of Australians. In fact, what happened is the year after we left, they started borrowing again. And been borrowing ever since. And rather than this being a gift to generations of future Australians, we've now borrowed $1 trillion, $1,000 billion.
It's an albatross.
We're celebrating Debt-Free Day with a debt of $1,000 billion, $1 trillion. That's where we've gone over the last 20 years. And the thing about it is this: it's making the future for young Australians harder. Because as I said before, the debt doesn't disappear. You've got to pay the interest bill on that every year. It comes out of their taxes. And in fact, because we can't meet our expenses, we just borrow some more. And, you know, young Australians are in a significantly worse position today because of this debt. Now, I hear the current government talk about intergenerational equity, which they think means higher taxes. I started talking about intergenerational equity 20 years ago.
Communists are in intergenerational equity. It's an easy sell because people are angry, people are mad. I understand. I can see where you're coming from, especially if you're a younger person and you're seeing all these roadblocks in your way. And then you see people who, Gen X, millennials, boomers, who are probably the most hated, who have prospered, like they've been able to do what you probably can't do. In terms of having the same opportunity, it's just not the same. You're going to want to see the government penalise them and help you out. I get it. That's the Labor voting base, the aggrieved, and that's why these taxes. It's not about intergenerational equality at all. It's about having a reason that's at its face acceptable to a lot of people who don't look any deeper into it and just realise they're just finding ways to tax more people and putting a veneer of bullshit on it. But yeah, I dare say the future of a lot of Australians has been sold out. Well, it's been... I can't even begin to imagine how long, if they started pulling in the... tightening the belt and all that, how long it's going to take to clear off $1 trillion in debt. I don't even know. I can't even comprehend that amount of money.
And it was all about restricting your spending so you didn't need higher taxes. That's what they should have been doing.
What's missing, though, is that adult conversation that government used to have with voters to say, this is the opportunity cost of debt. This is the hospital we can't build or the frigate we can't buy because we're paying back debt or we're bearing an interest burden. Why are we not talking about debt anymore as we did? And do you think Australians understand the cost of debt?
I think Australians would understand if someone would level with them. But nobody's levelling with them. And I think there's been fault on both sides of politics, right? If nobody's going to make this an issue, if nobody's going to explain this, you can't expect the public to be concerned themselves. If they hear from their political leaders, and sometimes from political leaders of both sides, don't worry about it. You know, budget's in deficit, we're growing debt, don't worry about it. You know, it'll be someone else's problem. It will be someone else's problem, that's right. It will be young Australians' problem.
How do we go, though, from a nation that built the snowy hydro, in your case did an intergenerational report to say, look, let's forecast out beyond election cycles and get the country in good shape?
No, it's all short-sighted sales pitch. They don't care about the future of the country. That's just the true reality of it. They just care about their jobs, their careers. Public servant in everything. It's just but name. They're not public servants. They're not serving us. I don't even understand who this current government is working for. It's supposed to be working for the people, representing the people, doing things in the people's best interests. That's not happening in any way. I can't comprehend who Labor is trying to help here, beyond themselves. Anyway, I'm going to move on. We've been ranting about the debt. Let's quickly, for the next 10 or so minutes, we'll talk about diversity in Australia.
Break by-election next month for One Nation. Get Up, the hard left lobby group, it plans to spend $600,000 attacking the One Nation leader with things like an ad linking her to Donald Trump and his war on Iran's Islamic terrorist regime, as if Pauline Hanson personally ordered in the US bombers and caused our fuel prices to rise. Plus, there's attack posters slamming Hanson as not the battler's champion at all, borrowing billionaire Gina Rinehart's private plane to campaign around the country, living the high life. And these posters ask,
well, at least Gina's paying for the fuel in it. At least Gina's paying for the charters. What about bloody Elbow and everyone else jetting around on our dime? Number one, we don't have any fuel. Number two, we're in bloody $1 trillion of debt, and you got these guys flying around in bloody chartered planes. Get stuffed. They should be driving around in a combi.
voters, is she still one of us? And promising to unveil the real Hanson. Still one of us? I mean, when did Get Up, which was founded with the help of union bosses, Harvard graduates and multimillionaires of the left, when did Get Up ever consider Hanson one of them?
Never.
The real question is
Hanson. I really hope she gets in. I don't think things can be changed. I think we're too much down the wrong path here, and it's got to be intergenerational. Amendments are going to have to be made to fix whatever absolute mess we're in at the moment. But I think it's a good sign that Australians are waking up. If she gets in, they want something different other than Labor and Liberal. Because while I smash Labor, at the end of the day, I'm not a Liberal fan either. I don't want any of them in. My biggest challenge on voting day is which one do I put last? What is my least preference, Labor or Liberal? So I'm not a Liberal fanboy. I get called that. Right-wing nut job or whatever. No, I just talk common sense here. But Hanson, do I think things will change drastically under her? I don't think so. I think they're all sort of cut from the same cloth to an extent. And she was, I recall back being, younger, being in primary school even. I'm going back 30 years. And when she was first around, and they were making fun of her. 25, 30 years ago, it's just a fish and chip shop. She's a nut job. She just runs a fish and chip shop. She knows nothing. The thing is, she would know more than most of these politicians about cash flow management and business operations. She's run a business. She's literally done it. These people haven't. They've sat in offices funded by the taxpayer their entire life, going out and drinking coffees half the day and sitting in front of computers, not working hard. So I think she's far more qualified to play most of them to even take a crack at running the joint. I'd love to see what would happen under her. But yeah, so I'm not overly optimistic as well.
Is Get Up one of us? Now, Get Up, you see, is headed by a bloke who boasts he was the brains behind the rise of the European Greens and falsely accuses Israel of genocide. Get Up has also hired Brittany Higgins' husband, David Shiraz, declared bank.
You're joking, right? Have a listen. Yeah. How can you take these? Well, Australia is more or less far left, the majority of it, so I guess it's nothing out of the ordinary. Got any wackos running the joint.
Bankrupt, of course, after being ordered to pay up for telling untruths about Higgins' former boss. It also campaigned for Labor's racist vote to Parliament, and it's right into that damaging global warming cult and is dead against the new oil, coal and gas mines that we now are learning we desperately need. So to Get Up, I ask, who is this us that you're talking about, Kimo Sabi? Because if us is you, count me out. In fact, my advice to voters is that if GetUp is against it, you are probably for it. I'll go further. GetUp actually represents exactly the kind of people and politics that have driven so many voters into supporting Hanson in the first place. And that has actually been exposed brilliantly in a new report today by our top think tank on immigration, the Australian Population Research Institute, headed by the excellent Bob Birrell. This report is called Australia's Search to the Right, How Far Can It Go? To which the answer is probably a fair way yet, with luck. Now, its biggest insight is into who, in fact, is backing One Nation and why, according to its surveys. You've got commentators saying, oh, look, One Nation voters are just people smashed by the cost of living pressures, sour people, a bit dumb. But that is entirely missing the point, as I've said for months. No, says this report, we're talking here about patriots. It says our survey data indicates that these voters comprise just over half the electorate, people open to...
You got to like the language that also gets used out there, that One Nation, it's a shaming tactic, right? Because people don't want to be criticised or shamed in public. They'll call them anyone who votes for One Nation a cooker. Which basically means that you're cooked, your brain's cooked, you're a nut job conspiracy theorist, or you're going down the sovereign citizen route or whatever. They try and demonise people who vote for One Nation because you question reality, you question what's going on here, and more people are doing it. We saw up in Queensland they had, I think it was over 30% approval rating in one of the polls. That's just astronomical. One Nation leading the polls. Good old Queensland. I guess that's it's the least woke probably place in Australia. A bar out in the bush somewhere in the Kimberleys or something like that. But good. Melbourne, yeah. Melbourne's, well, you get the mob like this get up, and that's who Melbourne voter base is for the most part, overwhelmingly represented by. I'm not saying everyone down there is that, but look who we've got in office down there. We've got Jacinta Rowland. We've got a full female buddy government, basically, of ministers.
To a pitch from the right, and we label them Australia Firsters. What they have in common is that they are patriots with a strong sense of belonging to Australia. And who are they? Well, they include the 58% of Australians born right here who have a strong sense of belonging here, the 60% of Australian citizens born in English-speaking countries, and the 69%, huge figure that, of migrants born in Europe also having a strong sense of belonging here. Now, unfortunately, just 42% of Asian and 46% of others, which includes people from the Middle East, feel they really belong, but it's still a fair number. Now, the report is just a test of whether you too, dear viewer, are an Australian firster, a patriot who votes on Australian values and might be open to...
Now, that's called racism, apparently. That's the whole thing about migration as well, which they've spun and they've distorted, is it's a racism movement. It's not. It's not at all. It's just close the doors, please. We had enough people come in. I don't care where you're from. Just stop it. So I dare say most people are from down the line somewhere, from a country other than Australia. I think everybody is, unless you're Aboriginal. So it's not racist at all to say, stop letting more people in. It's more mouths to feed. It's more people to shelter that we just don't have the resources for at the moment. We just don't have it. But the government keeps going against our interests. Everybody's interests. It's everybody's interests to stop this from happening.
To a pitch from the right to
apart from the government.
A pitch from One Nation. Or whether you're in fact what this report calls an open Australian, a somewhere elser. Now the test is this. Do you gag or do you cheer when you hear Anthony Albanese say what the Prime Minister did last month at a Vietnamese function?
We need to continue to cherish our diversity as a strength for our nation.
Now, personally, I gagged when I played you this very same clip on my show last month. Now, Diversity today, you see, is a challenge. There's now so much diversity. I mean, I'm pretty diverse.
Diversity is basically if you're not a recent migrant, then you're basically the minority. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there. I'm not going to go on for too long. We're already at 30 minutes. So if you guys want to go and find it, just check in Albanese government's diversity. Just write that in. You'll find this video. It'll pop straight up. Thanks for watching. If you've made it here to the end. And once again, consider subscribing and liking, sharing, all that stuff. If you want to view my other channels, you can find them all linked in the video description and pinned comment. Just click on those links. It'll take you to the channel page if you want to go and subscribe and or check them out. Thank you very much.